I still remember the night the world changed for me. The hum of the machines, the soft blue glow of the monitors, the scent of sterilized metal hanging in the air. It was supposed to be another breakthrough moment. For 12 years, I had poured my life into this dream, to create food that needed no animals, no farms, no God. I told myself it was for humanity, for progress, for those who went hungry. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing food as a gift and started seeing it as a formula. My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and I thought I was rewriting the laws of creation. You see, sometimes our greatest ambitions can quietly become our greatest blind spots. That night, I stood in the middle of my lab, holding a vial of the newest synthetic protein. It shimmered under the light like liquid silver, so pure, so perfect. I whispered to my assistant, "This is it. We've done it. We've made life better." But as I spoke those words, something inside me trembled. I didn't realize I was speaking as much to heaven as to her. Then came the spark, small, almost invisible. It danced for a moment, then swallowed everything. The explosion was blinding, yet in that chaos, I felt a strange peace, a weightlessness that defied all reason. One second I was standing on solid ground. The next I was floating between two worlds, earthly failure and divine encounter. And in that stillness a voice broke through the silence, soft yet powerful enough to shake eternity. "Elena, what have you done to my creation?" In that instant, I understood something I had forgotten long ago. When we try to play God, even with good intentions, we lose sight of the sacred order that keeps creation alive. I had spent my life perfecting what was already perfect in His hands. My desire to feed the world had blinded me to the fact that man does not live by bread or protein alone. We live by the breath of the one who gave us life in the first place. Sometimes God allows what feels like destruction to become the doorway to revelation. My lab burned, but in those flames my pride burned too. And when I finally opened my eyes again, I wasn't the same woman. The scientist who once trusted machines now trembled at the thought of the Creator. Maybe that's what grace looks like, not the end of your story, but the moment God rewrites it. Because when you've seen His light in the middle of your own explosion, you'll never again mistake creation for the Creator. When I opened my eyes, there was no light, only silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, like it's listening. I tried to move, but I had no body, no heartbeat, no breath. Just awareness floating in endless stillness. For a moment, I thought, this must be death. But then something happened that changed everything I believed about life and eternity. Out of that stillness came a voice, gentle, yet powerful enough to make the whole universe tremble. "Elena," it said, "what have you done to my creation?" It wasn't angry. It was sorrowful, like a father speaking to a lost child. In that moment, all the noise of my career, the applause, the ambition, it all fell away. There was nothing left but truth. I had spent my life studying how the human body works, but now I was experiencing something science could never explain: a consciousness beyond flesh, a soul that still was, even without a heartbeat. It was as if God was pulling back the curtain, saying, "See, you were never just chemicals and cells. You were always spirit first." I realized then that we spend so much time perfecting the outer world, our careers, our homes, our appearance, but how often do we stop to nourish the part of us that never dies? The explosion that ended my life on earth became the spark that opened my eyes to eternity. I could still remember the lab, the smell of metal, the hum of machines, the light that used to make me feel powerful. And now, here I was, stripped of all that, yet more alive than I had ever been. Isn't it interesting how sometimes you have to lose everything to see what truly matters? When you have no body, no possessions, no status, what remains is who you really are. As I floated there, surrounded by light that felt like love itself, I sensed God showing me something profound. You can build worlds, but if you forget the one who gave you breath, all your creation will crumble. I thought I was advancing humanity, but I had forgotten the author of humanity. The realization hit me like fire and mercy at once. That's when I understood this wasn't punishment, it was awakening. God wasn't finished with me, He was transforming me. Sometimes He lets the walls fall, the lights go out, not to destroy you, but to reveal the part of you that's eternal. And in that holy silence, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt love calling me home, saying you were never lost to me. Before the explosion, my life looked flawless, at least on paper. I was the woman the world admired, the scientist who could end world hunger. My face was on magazine covers. My talk streamed across continents. People clapped, cameras flashed, and every headline said the same thing: Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the genius who redefined the future of food. But what they didn't see were the cracks beneath the spotlight. Behind the awards and the applause was a girl who once went to bed hungry. I can still see that little girl, sitting at a wobbly kitchen table, watching her mother cry because there wasn't enough milk. That moment branded my soul. I promised myself I'd never feel powerless again. And I kept that promise with every degree, every discovery, every sleepless night. But here's the truth I didn't want to face. Sometimes the pain that pushes us forward can also pull us away from God. I wasn't just trying to feed the world, I was trying to prove I didn't need Him to do it. My science became my scripture, my lab coat became my armor. I told myself I was serving humanity, but deep down I was worshiping control. Isn't that something we all struggle with at times? We say, I'm just being ambitious, I'm just trying to make a difference. But if we're honest, sometimes what drives us isn't faith, it's fear. Fear of being small, fear of being forgotten. Every success brought more pressure, not peace. My office was filled with awards, but my heart was empty. Meals became numbers, calories, molecules, formulas. I stopped tasting food. I stopped praying. And every night before I fell asleep, a thought would whisper in the dark. If I can create life in a lab, does that make me the creator? That's how pride works. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It dresses itself as purpose, but its roots run deep in insecurity. Looking back, I realize I was chasing perfection, not purpose. I wanted to fix what I thought God left unfinished. But when you try to sit in the Creator's chair, the weight will crush you every time. You can have all the success in the world, but if you lose your connection to the one who gave you the dream, you'll end up hungry in ways no meal can satisfy. Now, when I think about that little girl at the table, I wish I could tell her, you don't have to prove your worth. God already called you enough. True success isn't about control, it's about surrender. Because when you finally let go of the need to be the creator, that's when you discover the joy of simply being His creation. When I found myself standing in that realm of light, everything I thought I knew about truth dissolved. There were no words, no sounds, only a brilliance that felt alive. Out of that living light, a figure emerged, clothed in glory so pure that even eternity seemed to bow before Him. His eyes were unlike anything I had ever seen, fire and compassion woven together. In that instant, I didn't need anyone to tell me who He was. I knew. Every part of me knew. It was Jesus. And standing before Him, I realized that no amount of success, science, or logic could prepare a soul for that kind of holiness. Every secret thought, every hidden motive I had buried under ambition and good intentions was suddenly laid bare. I fell to my knees, trembling. I wanted to explain, to justify, to tell Him, Lord, I was trying to help. I wanted to feed the world. But even as I said it, I heard how empty it sounded. My words couldn't stand in the presence of truth itself. He didn't raise his voice, didn't condemn me. He just looked at me with sorrow deeper than any ocean and said, "Elena, you tried to feed the world without me. You wanted to end hunger, but you forgot the hunger of the soul." Those words pierced me deeper than fire ever could. I saw my pride not as strength but as blindness. I had been so busy trying to fix creation that I forgot to honor the Creator. And yet, in that moment of judgment, I didn't feel wrath. I felt love, strong, fierce, unrelenting love. It was the kind that exposes you but doesn't destroy you. Have you ever been corrected by someone who loves you too much to let you stay the same? That's what this was. I realized that God doesn't confront us to shame us. He does it to restore us. He shows us our pride not to condemn but to heal the part of us that forgot how to depend on Him. I looked back on my life, every award, every discovery, every headline, and saw how each one had built a wall between me and Him. And yet, there He was, breaking through it with mercy. I understood then, true greatness isn't about how high we climb, but how deeply we bow. That's the beauty of grace. It meets us right where our pride falls apart. And as His light surrounded me, I didn't see a judge. I saw a Savior who never stopped reaching for me, even when I thought I didn't need Him. As I knelt before Him, surrounded by a light that felt both like fire and love, His words began to pierce the silence, not harsh, but steady, carrying a weight that only truth can hold. "Elena," He said, "you tried to feed the world's body, but you forgot its soul." In that single sentence, everything I'd built my life upon crumbled. I had spent years studying nutrition, believing that if I could solve hunger, I could heal humanity. But Jesus showed me something far deeper. Our greatest famine isn't found in our stomachs, it's found in our hearts. We can have full plates and still live empty lives. We can taste success but starve for meaning. That night, He wasn't talking just to me. He was revealing a truth for our generation. He said, "A time is coming when even food will test the hearts of my people. What they choose to eat will reveal whom they serve." At first I didn't understand, but then He showed me how comfort can become a cage, how convenience can quiet conviction, how we've learned to bless what's easy instead of discerning what's holy. We live in a world where we no longer ask, "Is this right?" We ask, "Is this fast? Is this profitable? Is it trending?" Jesus wasn't condemning the act of eating, He was exposing the spirit behind it. It wasn't about food. It was about devotion. And as He spoke, I felt Him peel back the layers of my own motives. I saw how I had replaced prayer with productivity, faith with formulas, gratitude with greed. I had built a system that could feed the body but starve the soul. Isn't that what we all risk when we chase progress without purpose? We fill our calendars, our wallets, our homes, but do we ever stop to fill our spirits? Then His voice softened, filled with compassion. "You wanted to end hunger, Elena, but only I can feed what's eternal. You cannot create peace in a lab or manufacture joy in a factory. What man makes may sustain for a moment, but only what I speak gives life." His words echoed in me like a heartbeat. I realized He wasn't giving me a lecture, He was giving me a warning. One day, humanity would sit at two tables, one filled with abundance but void of presence, and one with little, yet overflowing with grace. That's when I knew the choice isn't about food at all, it's about faith. What we consume shapes what we become. You can feed your body and still lose your soul, or you can feed your spirit and discover the life that never runs dry. Because in the end, the hunger of the heart can only be satisfied by the bread of life Himself. As I stood before Him, the light around us began to shift, moving, swirling like living fire. Jesus said, "Now you will see what man calls progress, but I call corruption." And before my eyes, the first vision opened. I saw a long banquet table stretching into infinity, covered with silver trays of bacon, sausages, and meats glistening under golden light. People laughed, raised their forks, and said, "We've earned this." It looked harmless, even joyful. But then the food began to pulse with a dark mist, and chains appeared around their wrists. The Lord whispered, "These are foods of comfort that have become prisons. What once came from my creation has been twisted by greed and indulgence." I saw that we weren't just feeding our bodies, we were feeding our bondage. Then the scene shifted. I found myself standing in a golden wheat field glowing under a perfect sky. For a moment, it felt holy. But suddenly, the stalks began to twist, their roots turning black as machines sprayed chemicals into the soil. "This," Jesus said, "is what happens when man tries to improve what I made good." They trade purity for profit and call it innovation. Nations argued over patents, farmers bowed to corporations, and I understood control had replaced care. A third vision unfolded like a carnival, bright and loud. Children laughed, people danced, and everywhere were candies, cakes, and sodas bubbling with color. But as I looked closer, the sweetness melted into decay. Each bite released a faint cry, and I heard the Lord say, "This is the sweetness of deception. The world chases pleasure that rots the soul." I saw how even believers justified excess with the words, "It's just one more," but one more always led to emptiness. Then came a city glowing with neon light. Crowds ran through the streets, clutching energy drinks that shone like liquid fire. I saw the exhaustion in their eyes, hearts racing yet empty. Jesus said, "They worship speed but forget my rest. They trade peace for productivity, and in their rush lose the rhythm of grace." The fifth vision turned golden again, wine glasses clinking, laughter filling the air. But the liquid in the glasses turned to smoke, dimming the flames above people's heads. "This is the cup of counterfeit joy," he said. "They drink to forget and end up forgetting me." I saw homes breaking, spirits numbing, people mistaking pleasure for peace. And finally, the sound of waves filled the air. Beautiful ocean, peaceful at first until the fish began to glow with poison, their bodies heavy with corruption. Families feasted, laughing, saying, "We are free under grace." But the Lord wept and said, "I never called this freedom. My holiness never expires." Each vision faded like ashes in the wind, and I understood. What the world consumes, it becomes. The table of corruption isn't just physical, it's spiritual. And every choice we make reveals not just our appetite, but our allegiance. When the final vision opened before me, I found myself standing in a vast, gleaming factory, silent, spotless, and cold. Conveyor belts stretched beyond sight, carrying identical packages marked with a glowing symbol, a green leaf inside a shining circle. Each box looked perfect, clean, efficient, safe. The label read, "Eden Formula, sustainable, approved for all." People lined up in endless rows, faces pale, eyes empty. They scanned a chip on their wrist, received their portion, and walked away without a word. It was order without joy, abundance without life. And in that silence, Jesus' voice echoed beside me, filled with sorrow. "This," he said, "is the final table of the world. Man will eat what the system provides, not what I have made." As I watched, I realized this wasn't just about food. It was about surrender. Humanity had traded faith for convenience, freedom for control. What once came from soil and sunlight now came from screens and laboratories. People no longer prayed for provision, they trusted the system to feed them, and the more they depended on it, the more it owned them. The food glowed faintly, not with life, but with programming. Every bite pulsed through their bodies like ink, binding them to something they couldn't see. It was nourishment without the Creator, perfection without presence. I thought back to the lab I once built, to the formulas I once worshipped. I had dreamed of food that could end hunger. But now I saw a future where food would end freedom. The world called it progress, God called it bondage. Jesus looked at me and said, "In the last days, the table will divide the faithful from the fearful. Some will choose the bread of the world, others will choose the word of life. One will fill the body, the other will save the soul." His words burned into me. I saw two kinds of light, one artificial, humming in neon cities where people lived comfortably but died spiritually, the other dim but real, flickering in small gatherings of believers sharing simple bread, praying with faith instead of fear. And then I understood this was more than prophecy. It was a warning. We are entering an age where even what we consume will test our devotion. Will we trust the Creator or the creation? Will we choose convenience or conviction? I realized that the future God showed me wasn't meant to terrify, it was meant to awaken. Because when the world says, "Eat and live," heaven whispers, "Live by every word that comes from my mouth." The question isn't what's on your plate, it's what's in your heart. When the light faded, I found myself standing in a world that looked eerily familiar, cities alive with noise and movement, yet heavy with silence. The shelves in every store were empty, the air thick with hunger and fear. Families wandered through aisles with baskets that held nothing but hope. Then, from the distance, I heard the rumble of trucks rolling into the city, bright white vehicles with the same glowing leaf stamped on their sides. Officials stood on top, shouting through megaphones, "Food for all, trust the system." Crowds rushed forward, waving ration cards, scanning digital IDs, desperate for survival. Every package they handed out carried that faint pulse, the same dark rhythm I had seen before in the Eden formula. And I heard the Lord whisper, "This is how the world will trade faith for safety." It broke my heart to see it, people who once prayed now pleading with machines. Believers who once trusted God now bowing to fear. They told themselves, "God will understand," as they took the food that numbed their spirit but fed their body. And in that moment, I saw the great divide, those who chose comfort over conviction, and those who stood firm in faith even when it meant hunger. The world mocked them, called them foolish, primitive, unscientific. Yet while others ate synthetic perfection, these few gathered in the mountains and valleys, sharing real bread baked from unseen provision. They sang instead of complaining, prayed instead of panicking, and somehow, miraculously, they were sustained. I saw angels descend among them, carrying baskets of food untouched by corruption, water from streams that never ran dry. They lacked nothing, because their faith lacked nothing. Jesus' voice rose above the scene, calm but unshakable. "The famine," he said, "will not only be of bread but of truth. Those who trust me will not starve, for I will feed them with what the world cannot manufacture." His words burned into me like sunlight on cold skin. I realized this was not a story about starvation, it was a story about surrender. There will come a time when every believer must choose. Will you trust the system or the Savior? Will you live by sight or by faith? That vision still echoes in my soul. Because the truth is, the greatest famine is already here, not a famine of food, but of faith. We fill our lives with what's easy, but we're starving for what's eternal. The faithful may not have much in the world's eyes, but they will have what matters most, peace that cannot be rationed, and a God who still knows how to feed his people in the wilderness. When the visions faded, I found myself surrounded once again by that endless light, soft, weightless, alive. I fell to my knees, trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper, awe. My voice broke as I whispered, "Lord, why me? I'm the one who tried to replace you." and he stepped closer, his presence like warmth after a long winter. "Elena," he said, "I do not choose the perfect, I choose the willing." His words cut through me like fire and healing all at once. Then he spoke what would change my life forever. "The famine that is coming is not only of bread but of truth. You must go back and tell them the table of this world is full, yet their souls are starving." Those words hung in the air like a promise and a burden. I saw faces, millions of them, people scrolling on their phones, chasing pleasure, consuming endlessly, yet emptier than ever. The Lord's voice grew softer. "Tell them that what they hunger for cannot be made in a factory, cannot be downloaded or designed. Only I can satisfy what the soul cries for." I wanted to stay in that light forever, but he smiled, and I knew it wasn't my time. "Go," he said, "and warn them. Many will laugh, but a few will awaken, and one awakened soul is worth the world." Then the light surged, flooding my vision until I could see nothing but white. The next sound I heard was a heartbeat my own, and the faint echo of voices shouting, "She's breathing again." I opened my eyes to blinding hospital lights. Machines beeped, hands moved around me, and my sister's sobs filled the air. I was alive, but I wasn't the same woman who died in that lab. The scientist who once trusted formulas now trembled at the mystery of grace. Since that moment, every breath has felt like borrowed time. Every meal, a reminder that life doesn't come from the hands of man but from the heart of the Creator. I no longer speak as Dr. Rodriguez, the nutritionist who wanted to feed the world. I speak as Elena, the witness who learned that feeding the world's body means nothing if its soul still starves. Maybe that's why you're hearing this now. Maybe this message found you for a reason. Because we live in a time when the world's table is full, technology, entertainment, success, but the spirit is still hungry. And just maybe, God is calling you to stand up, to speak truth, and to remind the world that real life doesn't come from what we make, but from the one who made us. When I woke up in that hospital bed, the beeping of machines sounded like a new kind of symphony, one I didn't deserve to hear, but one I would never take for granted again. My first breath back in this world wasn't just air, it was calling. I had died chasing progress, but I came back carrying purpose. I wasn't the same woman who once believed she could feed the world without God. That night, I realized that the true hunger of humanity isn't for bread, it's for truth. And the greatest famine of our time isn't physical, it's spiritual. From that moment on, I knew what my mission was. Jesus had told me, "The table of this world is full, but their souls are starving." Those words became the fire in my bones. Everywhere I looked, I saw it, the illusion of fullness. People with every comfort at their fingertips, but no peace in their hearts. We scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, achieve endlessly, and still, we wake up hungry, hungry for love that lasts, for meaning that satisfies, for peace that doesn't fade by morning. The tragedy isn't that the world doesn't have enough food, it's that we've forgotten where true nourishment comes from. So now, when I speak, I don't speak as a scientist, but as a witness. I tell people that every meal, every choice, is more than physical, it's spiritual. It's not just what's on your plate, but what's in your heart. Are you feeding your faith or feeding your fear? Are you filling your soul or numbing your spirit? The world offers its menu of easy pleasures, processed promises, and man-made miracles, but none of it can fill the emptiness only God was meant to satisfy. I've learned that the real battle isn't fought in laboratories or governments, it's fought at the table. Every time we choose gratitude over greed, prayer over panic, truth over convenience, we declare which kingdom we belong to. When you sit down to eat, remember you're not just feeding your body, you're shaping your soul. And maybe that's the message I was brought back to share, that the Creator still provides, that His table never runs out, and that no matter how lost we've become, He still calls us home. Because in the end, what we hunger for most isn't food or success, it's Him. And the moment we let Him fill that hunger, we stop surviving and finally start living.